Hello, third year. This is part B, part two, if you like, of the series of videos looking at box plots. So, in this video, we're going to look at comparing box plots. So, we are going to draw a new one, but we're also going to compare our two box plots together. Okay, so just to recap, this is the work that we did in the last video. So, we were drawing a box plot for Mr. Castle's class test results. I've just copied that box plot down here, so that's it here. You can see I've just copied that down. The reason for that is because part B of this question, so up here, says that we need to use the same scale to draw a 5-figure summary for Miss Fort's class. So I'm now starting to work on this question here. Okay, the first step that I've taken is just to put these numbers into numerical order. Okay, so that's nothing new. I've done that before. It's exactly the same process as we did in the last video. I've just put Miss Fort's class into numerical order. Next thing I'm going to do to draw my box plot, work out my quartiles 1, 2, and 3. So I need to split this data in half. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, there's 10 results. So quartile 1 is going to be, quartile 2 is going to be halfway between these two numbers. So that's halfway between 68 and 75, difference of 7, so that's 3.5. So that's going to be 71.5. Quartile 1, therefore, is going to be 63, and quartile 3 will be the 79. And that splits our data up into 4 equal parts. Okay. Next bit, we need to draw the box plot. Now I'm going to stick with this blue pen and I'm going to plot it above Mr. Castle's class. So remember, we do the 5 vertical lines, the maximum, the minimum, quartiles 1, 2, and 3. So the minimum in Miss Fort's class was 32. So I'm just going to pop a line in there for that. Maximum was 79, so that's just below 80. So let's pop a line in there. Then what do we have? No, that's not true. That's the maximum was 84. I just drew in quartile 3 there. So 84, round about here. Quartile 3 was 79, so let's pop that back in. Quartile 2 was 71.5, so just after 70. And quartile 1 was 63, so that's just after 60. Now look at that already. You can see that's a much tighter box, isn't it? Look at that. So we're going to finish the box plot now by creating the box. So we join quartiles 1, 2, and 3 with horizontal lines and then add these whiskers. They're called whiskers. Okay. So that blue one represents the data for Miss Fort's class. Nothing new in what I just did there. It was just drawing a box plot. Okay. Now what we want to do is really start to look at, well, what do these box plots tell us when we compare them? Because the next question says here, by comparing the two 5-figure summaries, just another word for box plot, what 2 comments can you make about the class results? There's 2 key things you want to look at when you're making a comparison. Okay, the 2 key things you want to look at are median. So when you're comparing box plots, what we want to look at, you want to look at the median, and you want to look at the interquartile range, or IQR, because they're the 2 things, interquartile range. Okay. The interquartile range is a measure of spread of data. Right, so it tells you how spread out the data is. In this example, it tells you how spread out the class results were. Okay, whereas the median gives you an overall sense of how well the class did in this context. So let's just have a look at these 2 box plots. Median. The median is this middle line. That's not a great line here. The median is this middle line here, yeah? So it's this one down here and this one down here. If you compare those two numbers, you can see straight away, hopefully, that Miss Fort's class did better on average than Mr. Castle's class because the median score is higher. So we can say fairly comfortably that the median score is higher. To back that up even further, we can see that quartile 3, the upper quartile, is ahead in Miss Fort's class, and so is the lower quartile. So in all three of those measures, Miss Fort's class did better. All right, so our first comparison, we can say, on average, Miss Fort's class did better than Mr. Castle's class in the test. Why? Because the median is higher. Okay, so we can say quite comfortably that on average, Miss Fort's class did better than Mr. Castle's class in the test because the median is higher. There are some really kind of key words that we need to identify when we're doing these kind of statements. You need to make it clear which two things you're comparing. So we're comparing Miss Fort's class with Mr. Castle's class. We've stated that clearly. We need to then say, what is it we're comparing? Well, it's test results, so we've mentioned that, and we've said kind of the reason why the median is higher. Okay, so for these comparisons, that would do just fine. The next thing we can look at is the spread of the data. So what does the interquartile range tell us? Well, look at how big this box is by comparison to how big this box is. Which box is more spread out? Hopefully you can see it's Mr. Castle's box. Yeah, Mr. Castle's box is much bigger. It's spread out over a larger area. What does that mean? That means that Mr. Castle's class results were less consistent. He had a much bigger spread of results than Miss Fort's class. At least 50% of Miss Fort's class were scored between 60% and 79%. Yes, whereas 50% of Mr. Castle's class scored between 40, let's just quickly check, 44% all the way up to 76%. So that's a much bigger spread. Okay, so you can see by looking at the size of the box how spread out the data is. So Miss Fort's class was more consistent, which means Mr. Castle's class was less consistent. Okay, the bigger the spread of data, the less consistent it is. The more concentrated, the less spread out the data, the more consistent it is. And that's a concept you need to get really straight in your head. Yeah, less spread out, more consistent, more spread out, less consistent. So we can say for our second point, so this was point 1, point number 2, we can say Miss Fort's class results are more consistent than Mr. Castle's. And then we can say as the IQR, the interquartile range, is smaller. Okay, that is the interquartile range in there, inside that box. That's your interquartile range. Upper quartile minus lower quartile. So that in there is your interquartile range on both of those diagrams. You can very clearly see that Miss Fort's interquartile range is much smaller than Mr. Castle's, and that's why we can make that statement. So Miss Fort's class did better overall, yeah, because they've got a higher median, and their results were actually closer together, right? They were much less spread out. That probably means there were more marks in the top end and much closer together, and less poor marks in Miss Fort's class. So that's what's reflected in those results. This is the extension now of box plots. We first know how to work them out, how to draw them, how to sketch them. The next thing is how to interpret them. So the key things are, look at the median, okay, which is this middle line here. Yep, we can make a statement about those. Try and use some of the words that I've used down here. Okay, that's quite important. And then you want to make a statement about the interquartile range, which was the overall size of the box. Okay, if the box is spread out, the data is less consistent. If the box is quite small, the data is more consistent. And again, that's the kind of language you need to use. Please replay this video, think about it nice and carefully, even make some notes once you're watching this video if you find that's going to be helpful. Remember that you have access to this example as it is, as you can see it now. You have access to this, it's in your class notebook, okay? So whilst I'm making the video, I'm writing into your class notebook, so you can access this whenever you need to. Give me a shout if you've got any questions or anything like that, it's absolutely fine. Okay, this is a slightly new concept, take your time, re-watch the video as many times as you need to, that's important. And yeah, ask any questions if you've got them. Like I said in the last video, I'll be around for you guys on Tuesday and Thursday.